welcome to our 8-Bush Talk Show. I'm Mickey Joshua, and I'm here with Mr. Ruhr today. So, Mr. Ruhr, our first question we have come up with is from the 1950s. So, what are some differences between growing up as a kid in the 50s and growing up as a kid in the 2020s?
How old do you think I am?
Mr. Michaels wrote this one.
He did write this one.
He did in fact write this one.
Okay, well,
If you want to say
thanks,
Skips, just
Keith.
say Skips.
No, that's
He
okay.
said that you were born in 48.
Listen, guys, first of all, I'll preface all this by saying I like to protect my age. Okay. It's kinda late. And you guys will understand and appreciate this as you get older. But think of it, I'm old enough, biologically anyways, to be a great-grandfather. Okay? Does that kind of... Yeah, thank you, Aaron.
Oh, you want me to? You're okay. What are some differences between growing up as a kid in the 50s and the 2020s?
Oh, are you kidding me? I grew up in a suburb of New York City, in Plainfield, New Jersey. And to me, Plainfield, New Jersey, in the mid-50s, late 50s, even into the early 60s, reminds me very much of the neighborhood I live in Walla Walla. People in Plainfield were, they were definitely suburbanites, okay? Everybody's parents, most everybody's parents commuted, or fathers anyway, commuted to New York City. They were business people, my dad included. Growing up in that era, we were innocent kids, and I don't think that innocence is really prevalent anymore in the 20s. I think kids today are exposed to things we never dreamed of in the 50s. We were all very naive, fortunately, and I'm happy for that. And we were sheltered. Life was very simple, was very good. And, I work in, as far as a sub, Waha and Garrison, and I see 6th graders in Garrison, and a lot of the kids just look currently to be, a lot of them are troubled. A lot of them are having a hard time at home. I never saw that growing up. We had kids, peers of mine, when I was, 8 or 10 years old, who came from, you'd call them dysfunctional homes, but it wasn't as widespread as it is now. So things were simpler back then. You guys have heard that before. That's definitely true. Things were simpler back then.
The next question we have from the 50s is, what was school like in the 50s?
Well, school was okay, very similar to everything else that was going on in the 50s. We didn't have middle school. We called it junior high school, and it was like any other adolescent experience, absolutely frightening. I was afraid of girls until I was in high school, and I think a lot of guys were in that boat also. What was that, Raquel? Maybe I can relate to that. School was big difference. We had infinite respect for our teachers, and if our teachers told us to do something, I don't care who the kid was, even the quote unquote bad kids, they towed the line because there were consequences. And that level of accountability doesn't exist today. I'm sure of that. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that's negatively impacted, or do you think the difference between the lack of respect now, do you think that's going to negatively impact us when we get older?
As long as you're aware of it, it shouldn't. If you understand that it's not right, and if you as young adults and parents, affecting your children or your younger siblings, if you see it, and you understand that it's not right, you can do everything you can possibly do to change it, to make it right. Does that answer? Okay. But yeah, kids are more conscientious. I think our goals were clearer, and teachers that you guys have nowadays are far superior to the teachers I had. Seriously, definitely. What's that?
Yeah, shout out Keith.
Shout out Keith.
Yeah, but again, it goes back to the respect thing, and that carried on into the high school years and even beyond. But school was, yeah.
You have any wisdom for us about school? You know, next year's our last year in this place.
Only 1 year to
You
redeem
listen. You guys
ourselves.
are AP students. You guys are doing it right. Okay. Seriously. You guys are here because you're conscientious. You see the value of a good education. And this is, AP classes, it's a shortcut. Take advantage of it, guys. Really. You're saving time, you're saving money. This is gonna put you ahead. We didn't have AP classes in my high school. It was a good high school, but we didn't have AP classes. I don't know when that whole approach to education began, but it's ingenious. It is just such a valuable tool. So
What did you do after high school?
I went to college, went to the University of Vermont, and the first semester, I was an okay student. Second semester, I blew it off. Big time. And consequently, I flunked out my second semester at UVM. And I went to college when I was 17 years old. I was very immature. Even when I was 18, I was still very immature. And that's when I bombed out of school. Came back to my parents' home in New Jersey, and this is when Vietnam was just getting going. It was ramping up, okay. And my dad mentioned to me that there was a dirty little war going on the other side of the world, and that maybe I might want to think about that. This was just before the draft started, and probably the first proactive thing I ever did. I joined the Navy, and I joined the Navy because I didn't want to go to the jungle. I had friends who were headed that way, and in fact, 5 of my high school classmates went over there and didn't come back. And subsequent to that, a number of friends went to Vietnam and had a really, really hard time. So I joined the Navy. I spent 4 years active duty, 2 years in inactive reserve. And the Navy was, I'd never do it again, but I'm happy I did it. Okay, it's one of those deals. And in the Navy, I was stationed on a warship, what they called back then destroyers. And the destroyer was a Kennedy vessel, Joseph P. Kennedy Jr., named after JFK's older brother, who was killed in the military. So I did that for, as I say, 4 years. Got out a little bit early to go back to UVM. They were willing to give me another chance. And this time I went back, I was a different person. And I still had a hell of a good time, but I made Dean's List every semester, so it's a big difference.
Yes, Mr. Ruhr.
Yes.
Once you know how to work it, you can work it. Okay, so that's what I did after high school.
And what did you major in college?
Forest management.
Very interesting.
This was before schools began to offer forest ecology programs. But back then, forest management was teaching how to be a tree farmer.
It's very cool. Did you farm trees?
No. I was more interested in how to use wood products.
Did you start us a fire?
Could I start you a fire?
With a rock and a stick.
No.
With a magnifying glass?
Yeah, anybody can do
Yeah,
that.
anybody.
You know. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah? All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, one of our next questions are, did you ever live in a commune?
I saw that. Ben showed me that too.
Ben, don't spoil the questions.
No, I didn't live in a commune. I knew some people who did. Communes, I think, guys, were maybe a dream some people had. I knew very, very few people who went that route. During the late 60s, early 70s, young people were really striving for a liberal lifestyle, but very few people pulled it off. There were people from the East Coast, who jump in their car and drive to San Francisco and give it a shot. I grew up on the East Coast, so I really don't know what the kids in LA and San Francisco and Seattle were doing, but there was so much media focus on that lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So we all knew about it, but no, the commune thing. There were communes in New York, Vermont, Massachusetts. I mean, I was aware of them, but no, wasn't for me.
All right. What is your recollection and reaction to the Bay of Pigs?
The Bay of Pigs was, I was aware of it, and this was 1961, I believe. Yeah, 61. Anyways, I think by that time I understood that there was a lot of, illicit, illegal, suspicious activity of the government. I think, as Americans or as citizens of the world, we begin to lose faith in our governments at a certain age. Once we learn more about what they're engaged in, especially in our country. I love our country, but we can do better. That's the way I feel about it. But the Bay of Pigs, it didn't hit me the way Cuban Missile Crisis did. That's the one that really caught my attention. And I can guarantee if you guys had been alive then, it would have done the same thing to you. So I'll tell you about the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Please do.
I was 13 at the time, and I forget what it's called. I was thinking about this yesterday. There's a symbolic representation of how much time is left in the world, and it's done as an analog clock. You guys familiar with this?
It's the nuclear clock.
Nuclear clock, is that what it is, Caden? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? Well, with the Cuban Missile Crisis, the second hand was like 2 seconds before 0 hour. It was that close. It was so tense. And as a 13-year-old person, yeah, I was aware of how close we were to being obliterated. Mind you, everybody even then, or especially then, was aware of the destruction in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And I'd read enough about it to know that if anything like that were to happen again, New York City would have been blown to smithereens. And we were close, as I say, in New Jersey to New York City. the impact of it was absolutely frightening. And I remember sitting on the curb in front of my house one afternoon and just saying, this is it. This is the end of it. My parents didn't confide in me that they had any great fear, but everybody felt that way. Yeah, it was frightening, truly frightening. And the war in Ukraine and the fact that these threats are being thrown around by Putin about a nuclear option. The nuclear war is not a local war. It's a global event. You don't have a limited action to wipe out a certain person's army. Everybody's finger would be all over the buttons, and that would be the end of it. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, one of our next questions.
Yeah.
Oh, this is kind of a fun one. What was your favorite bands in the 90s?
In the 90s?
Yeah.
In the 90s?
Yeah, you can show us some 90s dance moves too. We would love that.
My
That was the favorite.
yeah, that's my dance move. Okay. My bands. my favorite bands in the 90s were my favorite bands in the 70s and even the 60s. I've always been a huge Bob Dylan fan. Okay, I don't know if you guys know anything about Bob Dylan, but he is the bard of my generation. His lyrics, if you're not familiar with them, check them out, okay?
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me in the jingle jangle.
Would you sing to us?
We can pull. What's your favorite song? I can pull it up for karaoke.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't need to do that. But thank you anyways. Rick. The bands from the current stuff, 90s. That's 30 years ago. That's current. In my head, it is. From the 90s.
Any time period. You can just talk about.
Okay. Well,
when you were growing
everybody loved the Beatles, and it's like there were camps that loved the Beatles and another camp that loved the Stones, and they'd argue back and forth about
Battle of the Bands.
which music had more more oomph to it or whatever. But about music, listen, get me going on music. Music nowadays that you guys are not that you're listening to it, but that seems to be all that is being offered to you guys. And to me, it's a sad excuse for art. It really is. Especially, I won't call it music, but rap is. It's well, not Nicki Minaj.
You want to know what? No, I am gonna leave.
I mean,
She's an Eminem.
okay. And even Eminem nowadays is preferable to some of the other stuff that's out there, okay?
Who's your least favorite rapper?
I wouldn't be able to tell you that.
Stop.
What was that?
It's a sad excuse for music. I mean, a beat.
Hey, Mr. Roseman, bars, you're out of the best art.
That ain't music, guys. And the lyrics are just, they're terrible.
But why y'all got to lie?
Really?
Foul.
It's
foul.
it's misogynistic. It's just violent, stupid. That's how I feel about it. But I've always loved, pop music, classical music, and there's even really good traditional country and western stuff that I'll listen to.
Do you have a favorite pop artist?
Define pop.
It's kind of.
Thank you for that.
You can use it under your own definition.
I don't know, guys. To me,
Okay.
to me, it all fits into one genre or another. Raquel,
When would, or like what time period would you say music changed?
very good question. You mentioned Eminem. What, Mila? Yeah. When did Eminem start doing his thing? 90s?
It was the late 90s.
Was it late 90s?
Yeah.
Okay.
My dad says the same thing.
Yeah, that's when it kind of switched gears, and it just became more violent, less respectful, and it was it's confrontational music.
Mr. Ruhr, do
yeah.
you like Avril Lavigne?
Avril Lavigne?
Avril?
Avril? See, what do I know? Avril Lavigne? I've heard of Avril Lavigne,
Uh-huh.
No
but
opinions.
I really don't know. I've honestly, and what I'm going to do is check out Avril Lavigne. It's Avril? Avril? Okay.
So, what's your favorite Beatles song? Who is highlight of it?
Favorite Beatles song?
Yeah.
It's like asking me what my favorite Dylan song is.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No. The best album was either Rubber Soul or Revolver. So anything off of those two. Okay. Yeah, anything off of those.
Did you ever go to Woodstock?
I was in the Navy,
Oh.
and I couldn't get off that day.
Would you have on that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had a bunch of friends. It was very convenient to get there. The Navy thing, I was stationed in Rhode Island, so it would have been fairly simple to get up to Woodstock. And yeah, a bunch of my buddies went. Had a great time.
So, what's your favorite 90s fashion trend?
I'll tell you guys, my wife buys my clothing. She doesn't tell me what to wear. Fashion? You're asking about fashion?
I'll tell you mine, Pamela Anderson.
Can you give me a starter?
Yeah, so I asked Mr. Huderberg this question. He told me his favorite 90s fashion trend was like the color changing fabric. Like when you would like touch it, it would
Like
change
shark skin?
color.
Oh, no.
I'm
It
not.
actually was sensitive?
Oh, the thermal stuff?
Yeah.
Really? I never even heard of that.
Mr. Huderberg loves that stuff.
Really? I'll talk to him about it.
You should talk to him about
Yeah,
it.
I just saw him a few minutes ago. 90s fashion?
Do you see it coming back? Like, can you see things that you used to wear, like us wearing?
Yeah, definitely. It's the styles, they're on an endless loop, maybe 30 years or so. Okay, so anything you have now that you start to lose interest in wearing, don't throw it away. Just put it back in the closet. Okay.
Maybe that's why I have so many clothes.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
My wife has a solution to that. If she doesn't wear something in 2 years, goes to Goodwill. 2 years. I have clothing that I've had for 30 years.
Just say you're not even 30.
Seriously. So fashion, I don't care about fashion.
Your outfit looks great, Mr. Rohr.
Thanks,
Okay.
Vicky.
Of course. Okay, so this question is, what were some of your fears during the Cold War?
The nuclear thing, and I understand that, and that's still one of my fears today. You take a look at some of the countries that have the nuclear capability. Pakistan? You kidding me? India and Pakistan, they've hated each other forever, and I don't know. They've got nukes. South Africa, I think they still have nukes. Cold War, yeah. The Cold War, I'd love to see us go into another Cold War, because it would, compared to what's going on today, it would just tone everything down. I mean, that's how we're in an era of great risk right now. So the Cold War, I think, would be preferable to what we're experiencing.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Were you afraid during like the Red Scare when there was fear of communists and spies throughout the country?
I wasn't alive for that.
Well, I meant just during the Cold War, sorry, not the Red Scare, I apologize. But
Oh.
just, were you afraid of like spies and things throughout the United States?
No.
You weren't a big
He's
McCarthyist,
fearless.
Mr. Ruhr.
No, that
I
predates
did
me,
not know the
Aaron.
Red Scare.
Were you a communist?
This is
I have-
actually the McCarthy hearing.
I have a cousin who has been a card-carrying communist. She's proud of it. I mean, she's not, actively engaged in promoting communism, but yeah, she's a communist. I'm not.
Do you remember the moment when JFK was shot?
I was in biology class. That's the kind of thing you remember, definitely. I mean, you guys weren't alive for 9/11, but I remember where I was. I remember exactly who I was talking to and what happened. But yeah, when JFK was shot, November 23rd or 2nd, I forget, 63. Yeah, I was in biology class, and it was early in 1:30 or something. I think it was. The principal came over the public address system and explained to us what had happened. You guys have to understand that Kennedy was a very beloved president. He was young, he was good looking, he had a lovely wife. Irish Catholics loved that man. And he represented a really bright future for our country. As time went on, Kennedy was, revealed as, or exposed as a playboy, but that was almost condoned back then, I have to say. He was extremely popular, and everybody felt the loss. Yeah. Dylan.
So like into like the 70s, how did like Watergate change like your political views and like stuff like that? And,
I was already I wouldn't say a Nixon hater, but he was whereas Kennedy was popular, Nixon was very unpopular. I think even among a lot of Republicans. And the whole Watergate thing was like, a lot of people felt they could see this coming. It was like, I told you so kind of thing. Nixon was known back then, and maybe still is, a tricky dick, because the guy was sly. He was slippery, and he had the ability to he was good. He was a great politician. Talked out of the side of his mouth and sidestepped anything that was really threatening to his administration. My brother-in-law was Deputy Attorney General at the time, and Watergate brought down an awful lot of people. And my brother-in-law Harlington, his boss, a guy named Dick Kleindienst, was Attorney General, and he got axed because of Watergate. The net was cast very widely. Anybody who knew anything about it went down with it. But it didn't surprise me at all. The Pentagon Papers, that was no surprise either, what they did to Daniel Ellsberg. So Watergate was, by that time, my friends and I had lost faith in the government. You guys, I don't know if you've ever heard that cliche, don't trust anybody over 30. We used to say that all the time. I mean, because if you were over 30, it was kind of accepted that you were becoming part of the establishment. Do you guys use that term, establishment, anymore? The establishment is when you sell out to the man, you become part of the machine. and you no longer have the values that made you have that fresh, naive, unspoiled outlook on life. So when you become establishment, you get married, you have kids, you have a 9 to 5, you forget about the stuff that really, really mattered to you when you were younger. So
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Ruhr. Our time today is coming to a close,
Okay.
but we will
Are
open
we?
back up again tomorrow.
Okay.
And thanks everyone for watching.